everybody. Welcome to our third workshop. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to get started on this workshop. I think you all are going to enjoy our guest speaker this evening. I think gonna learn a lot. Our topic of our workshop this evening is on the topic of how do I prepare for a professional interview. So you're going into the interview, maybe you've gone to career fairs, maybe your mentors hooked you up and connected you with someone at their company. Maybe you've gotten some referrals somewhere else. Doesn't really matter. You are about to step into the interview. Maybe you've already had interviews before. This workshop is about how to think about interviews differently. We're bringing in guest speakers who are experts on this topic from around the world to give you insight and wisdom on how to make the most out of the professional interview. So this workshop is going to be about 45 minutes long with, and I encourage you to ask questions throughout the workshop. I'm going to ask you 3 questions during the workshop, which I'll have you answer. That's how you get credit for being here. You're now midway through the program so far. You should have already had your first conversation with your mentor. Hopefully you've already started setting up your second conversation with your mentor. If you have not, or you're struggling to get in touch with your mentor, please email support@ambition-in-motion.com. We need to take care of you so then you can get connected and make the most out of this program. So really, this program is all about how can you prepare for the first professional interview. Really, what you're selling your interviewer on is your ability, essentially your future potential opportunity. Essentially, you are selling them on your potential, because at the end of the day, people are not expecting you to come in and be the expert on XYZ topic. They are expecting you to be a willing learner and someone that's eager to gain knowledge and to be a better professional. If you can convey that, you will get the opportunity. But it will be competitive, especially in highly competitive industries. And I know that anybody that's in this program is more likely than not going into a career that's competitive. I mean, you would not have gotten a mentor had you not wanted to take your level, take your career, take your life to the next level. So with that said, I want to encourage you to keep your head up, keep applying, put yourself out there for more opportunities, and leverage the insight and knowledge that you're getting in these workshops to make yourself and to help you better prepare yourself for the interview. Now, before we get started into our main program, I want to ask you a quick question, and that question is, when it comes to the interview, how do you want people to feel about you? In other words, what feeling are you trying to convey about yourself when you are in an interview? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that, because I think if we are more intentional about how we want other people to feel about us in the interview, our likelihood of actually having that happen increases substantially. I mean, I've talked about in past workshops, strategy, story, state, which I will talk about in a moment, but this is a really big part of the story part. Like, what is the story that you're telling yourself? Now, I think sometimes we can interpret that as psyching ourselves up, getting ourselves confident, getting ourselves pumped for why we're going to be successful. And I think that's great. But I think if we could take it to another level, that being intentional about how we want other people to perceive us. So if we want them to perceive us as confident, or if we want them to perceive us as knowledgeable, or if we want them to perceive us as eager to learn and having potential, it could be a variety of things. But what I really want you to do is I really want you to identify feelings that you want other people to feel about you when you enter their world. Because you can be intentional about that. Your likelihood of having them actually feel that is much greater. But if you don't set the intention, you have no idea how they're going to feel about you. You've got really no control over it. But if you intentionally think to yourself, I want people to think of me as confident. Okay, what am I going to do that's going to convey and convey confidence? Really, it's all about whatever that feeling you want to convey. Make sure that you are taking actions and being intentional about ensuring that other people view you that way, and that you come in trying to actively think about actions that you can take that will help other people perceive you in that light. So let's start under the next part of our workshop. Now, I've talked about this in the past before, and I've talked about this in previous workshops, but one of the big things that I always love to stress is the 3 keys to success in the program. There are 3 of them. That is your strategy, that is your story, that is your state. I bring it up every single time because it is that important. And the reason why it's important is because if we are not honing our strategy, honing our story, honing our state, we are not setting ourselves up for successful. If we let someone else drive our roadmap for us, we could end up in a location that we do not want to be. But if we are intentional about our story, if we're intentional about our strategy, if we are intentional about our state, we are much more likely to get to where we would like to go. It's kind of like the law of attraction. When we put it out there, and we put it out to more people, and we're more intentional about what we want to accomplish, and we're more intentional about how we are going to convey our bodies and ourselves to other people, the likelihood that it comes back to us is much greater. So I want to talk about state. State is the most important thing. Like physically, where are you at in your life, in your world? What is going on? I don't care how stressed you are. I don't care how mad you are. I don't care how dejected you are. I don't care of anything negative going on in your world. If you can get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, especially for the interview, you will be successful. I'm a big proponent of power poses. I'm a big proponent of screaming at the top of your lungs and dancing out. In fact, I'd like to do that with you right now. So for the next 30 seconds, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to stand up. I'd like you to shimmy it out. I'd like you to shake it out. I'd like you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just scream at the top of your lungs at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go, because you've got nothing to lose. I don't care if it's a popularity contest. I don't care if you're in a library. I don't care if you're in a house. What do you have to lose? This is not a coolness effort here. It's about making an impact and preparing yourself physically for being successful. What is the price of success? Getting yourself into a state conducive for being successful. Maybe looking a little weird to some of your colleagues, coworkers, or peers, but what is that cost to you in the long run? Nothing. They're going to say, you know, hey, what were you doing? Why were you dancing? Why were you screaming at the top of your lungs? You say, hey, I'm getting myself in a state conducive for being successful. Maybe they've never heard about it before. Maybe they've never learned. You can educate them on this. So don't worry about how other people are perceiving you when you are going to get yourself into a state that's going to level up your game, especially when it comes to the interview. Now, you may not want to do this in the office of a business that you are about to interview in, but you could certainly do it in the bathroom, in a bathroom stall. Get yourself into a 2-minute power pose. Stand up like Superman or Superwoman, or put your arms out like as if you're a star. There's a lot of things that you can do to get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, but you should be doing something, because if you're not, you are letting the way that other people perceive you essentially come up to chance. And you don't want to chance it, especially for the opportunity of a lifetime. And you have no idea which opportunity is the opportunity of a lifetime. It may not be this job. It could be the next one. If you make a positive impression in an interview and you may not land that job, that interviewer could have really loved how you interviewed, and that person may not be at that company for forever, or they might be, and they might come up with a new job. They might reach out to you personally to have you come and interview. It's all about the relationship. It's all about how they perceive you. It's all about that impression you leave. Your state is critical. Now, what is the story you tell yourself for why you are going to be successful? This is something we kind of did earlier when I asked you, how do you want other people to feel about you in the interview? This is a great exercise to prepare yourself for a professional interview. If you are intentional about how you want other people to feel about you, you are going to put yourself into a position to succeed, because then you're much more likely to manifest that outcome. Literally, law of attraction, putting it out there. I want other people to feel XYZ about me. Confident, smart, intelligent, well prepared. I don't care what it is. Maybe it's a weakness that you have, but you like to have them perceive it as a strength. Maybe it's a strength that you have that you'd really like to amplify even as a greater strength. Doesn't matter, but set an intention of something. Because if you don't set an intention of something, it could be wild in terms of what they actually perceive of you. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are the things that you're going to do to make the most out of this interview? Are you going to come prepared with questions? Are you going to come prepared with doing background research on the company? Are you going to make an intentional, focused effort on taking notes during the conversation, so then you're asking poignant, direct questions to the interviewer that are relevant about his or her life? Are you going to do the things that you need to do to be the most successful in an interview, or are you not? So the strategies you're going to learn from our guest speaker later on in this workshop, I think you're going to really enjoy what our guest speaker has to say. But before we jump into our guest speaker, I want to talk about one final thing, and that is getting yourself into a routine that can help you prepare for an interview. One of the things that I like to do, have an accountability partner. This could be it could be anybody. But what you want to do with your accountability is you want to share with your accountability partner 3 things that you learned this week and 1 thing that you've done to get closer to that internship or job. What this does, and you might think this sounds silly, you might think this sounds crazy, it could be another student in the program, it could be a friend of yours, does not matter. But what we've learned, what we've observed is that students who land jobs and internships through this program are substantially more likely to actually land that job and internship if they told other people about their experience. One of the questions we ask at the end of the question is, on average, how many other people did you tell about your experience in the program? What we ended up learning was that when a student told 20 or more people about their experience in Ambition in Motion, their likelihood of also landing their job and internship was substantially higher than students who didn't. There's a direct correlation to you telling more people about your experience and what you're learning in this program. to actually landing the outcomes you like than not. So I want to challenge you to identify an accountability partner. Share with them 3 things that you've learned this week and 1 thing that you've done to help you get closer to landing that job or internship. Now, the other big thing that I want to bring up with you is a referral program. So we are now starting to open up the applications. And one, I'd love for you to be in part of the program again. You can get a new mentor, you're going to get new content, you're going to learn from new speakers. But more importantly, I want you to encourage other students to get involved as well. We have a referral program for you, so then you are discounted to get in the program next semester. Essentially, anytime that anybody applies, we ask them, how'd you hear about us? If they write in your name, you get credit. If you don't mind being an ambassador for this program and helping encourage other students to get involved and take advantage of this, I would greatly appreciate it, because it would help us make a bigger impact on more people, which is really what our goal is. So let's jump into our workshop. I'm so excited for you to meet our guest speaker. I'm so excited to transition into this next part of the workshop. Remember to answer the 3 questions that we asked during the workshop. That's how you get credit for being here within 24 hours of the workshop going live. If you got any questions, any concerns, any issues with anything at all, please email support@ambition-in-motion.com. We will answer those questions, concerns, and issues. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited for you to meet our guest speaker. Hey everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I am so excited to dive into our topic. We're here to talk about how to prepare for the interview. As a lot of students, we're in this really interesting scenario with our lives. We got COVID going on, and maybe we're accustomed to preparing for the interview in person. I know a lot of the preparatory materials and classes and teachings have all been about, hey, how do you give the proper handshake? How do you give the right eye contact? How do you put yourself in the best position in an in-person interview? And now we're posing the scenario where we have to do this virtually. We're on camera and we're not in person. We're not handshaking, and it's interesting. It's different. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just, it is what it is. But we're here to try to make an impact. We're here to set ourselves apart. And we've got a great guest with us here this evening. We've got Elsa Manning. Elsa is the Marketing and Talent Acquisition Manager for O'Brien & Company / Open Concept Architecture. Elsa, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'd love to start with, how did you get into this? How did you get into your work today? What was that interview process like? Like, what were the things that you did that helped set yourself apart, or just helped you determine this was the path that you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, so I had a non-traditional route as far as getting into the organization that I'm in now. I was working at Legit Finance and Accounting, which is a staffing firm for finance and accounting professionals, working with them for about 2.5 years, and actually worked with O'Brien & Company as one of my clients. And was working with the owner, Keely O'Brien, and helped them find their CFO as well as their systems manager, and really built a great relationship with him over those 2.5 years, and decided to kind of take a transition and a pause in working. And then the owner of O'Brien & Company actually reached out to me directly because, oh my gosh, Elsa, why aren't you at this firm anymore? I want you at my firm because you did such an amazing job. And I was able to find some really great talent for them. So that kind of just goes to show, if you kind of put your best foot forward, and you never know kind of where it's going to take you. So yeah. That's cool. That's awesome. So if I'm hearing you right, you're at this staffing agency. Well, one, I'd be curious to know, just real quick, what did you study in college, and why did going to the staffing agency, why was that of interest to you? Yeah, well, I actually studied communication in college and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, as I'm sure most people feel the same way when they're graduating. And, I was excited just to get a job when I graduated and kind of go from there. And my sister actually worked for the organization, and she told me about it, and she said, why don't you apply and maybe I can help you get your foot in the door. And I got an interview and then was hired, and kind of found myself in staffing. And then kind of progress from there. But yeah, I'm kind of forgetting the other question you asked me. But oh yeah, so what about so I think you answered it. So your sister was in the industry. She suggested you went ahead for it. And was this in Ohio, and like where you went to college? If that's correct, what motivated you to move to Portland? Yeah, so this was out in Columbus, Ohio. And actually, when I was applying for that job, I lived in Ohio, and specifically right outside Columbus in Granville for 4 years. And I was excited to go explore. I'm one of 5 siblings and was ready to, move out and be ready on my own and learn a little bit more about other parts of the country. So they knew from in the get-go that I wanted to live elsewhere. And so they came to me and said, you've been doing a great job. We know that you don't want to live in Columbus forever. We do have an office opening in Portland, Oregon. Would you like to go? And I've never even considered living on the West Coast or Oregon in general, and had no idea what it would be like, but took the opportunity and decided to do it. So yeah, I learned a ton through that too.
I would love to learn about that decision-making process, because I mean, that would require you to totally uproot everything that you've got going on in your life, like relationships, work or family relationships, personal relationships, friend relationships. I mean, I would imagine that when you moved to Portland, you had to start over. Like, did you have any friends in Portland? What was that like?
Oh my gosh, it was terrifying for sure. I mean, any sort of change is scary, but there was some pull that I felt. And, when it comes to job hunting, when it comes to making big decisions like that, even when you're looking at colleges, and I even like to compare it to relationships, it's all about feeling. And I just sort of felt like this is the time. And luckily for me, my biggest relationships were my family, which were all in Maryland. So I knew that either if I was going to go back to home Maryland, I'd have, a life that I was familiar with, but kind of ready for a change. But yeah, I didn't know a single person in Portland except for my manager that was moving with me. So definitely scary, but if you're willing to kind of put yourself out there, you can sort of start over anywhere.
I love that. I think that's really cool. I think there's a lot of students that maybe have an idea of, okay, I have an idea of where I'd like to live work-wise, but maybe they're open to the type of work that they're doing, but there's that fear of like, oh, geez, or like, what if I don't know anybody? What kind of did you tell yourself? What was your mentality about how you overcame that? How did you justify this was the right decision for you?
Well, there's always home. I could have always gone back home if worst case scenario, and nothing's permanent, right? And so kind of having that mindset and just getting excited and doing the research and learning more about Portland, and just taking it more as an opportunity and saying yes to an opportunity rather than dreading it and stressing about it. I mean, it's a lot of things to think about when you're moving, especially across country, but it's an incredible opportunity to learn about yourself and to grow. So definitely, I encourage anybody that's presented with something like that to definitely jump on it.
Yeah. So that's really cool. So it sounds like you more or less had an in both Legend as well as O'Brien when it came to that role, but you still had to go through the interviewing process. What was that like for you? Was it competitive? What was the interviewing process like for you in the roles that you've pursued in your life? Yeah,
well, I've definitely had to pursue several positions. I've been, in the unemployment boat before, and I 100% remember that feeling of, you feel, you have rejection a lot, and you sort of feel like it's hopeless. And why hasn't anyone even returned any of my calls on any of the applications I put in? And I felt that several times in my life. And while a few of my positions have luckily fallen into place through other actions, not always the case. So, I mean, as far as interviewing, you just want to be prepared, and you want to kind of know what excites you, what interests you in certain organizations, or at least, certain positions, and do your research as far as kind of, you can utilize resources to find out other employees and kind of whether they liked it, and kind of making those decisions based off of other networking opportunities that you have.
So that's cool. I love how you bring in the network as a part of just gathering information about, I guess, really, I think on a deeper level, the big thing that you're coming at this interview process with is this idea that you're not being interviewed just by the company, you're interviewing them for why it's a good role for you. And I think that's such a transition in mentality, because I think like historically, we've always thought like, oh, like I've got to try to make myself as like approachable and amazing as we possibly can. And And it's even evidence in the fact that how much time do applicants put in the resume writing process compared to how much time do the actual employers putting in the job posting process? You know what I mean? It's not even, but it's starting to even out because we're starting to see a lot of things of, we call this maybe the great resignation right now, or just essentially employees gaining more power in the workplace, meaning that as a prospective employee, we have the power. If we're someone that's interested in pursuing a role, we got to make sure it's right for us, and it's not a bad fit, and that it's got the right culture for us. And so I love, what are some questions? What are some things? I mean, I know you mentioned you looked at Glassdoor and you looked at some research and you interviewed people, but what are some questions that you asked to get a better idea of, is this company culture the right fit for you?
Yeah, I think you have to kind of think about your values and kind of what you prioritize. So, obviously things like benefits and mission and vision and values and all of those things are very important, and 401k and all those things. But, I think as you change in your life, so do your priorities, and understanding, what's more important. Is it time off? Is it, prioritizing my family? Is it kind of work-life balance? Or am I looking for something that really drives me day to day? And kind of really understanding the organization and yourself. And I think you can learn that stuff through internships about what you like, maybe what you hate, maybe what you don't really love. And you can ask colleagues and other peers. And I mean, my parents, for so long when I was growing up, I would push back, but they would always tell me, why don't you go and ask so-and-so for coffee? You think you're interested in marketing? Go sit with them and ask them for coffee. And I think that I wish I did that more. I did it a few times, but I wish I did it more, because I think you can really learn a lot, whether they set you up for a job or not. It's still a learning opportunity and practice for potential interviews, practice speaking professionally and with shaking hands, and it's all going to help you grow and prepare you for future decisions. So
I love that. I love that example that you gave of going out and doing informational interviews. I think that's so powerful, and I think that makes a ton of sense. And if you are a student that's willing to set yourself apart and go and do that, because by the way, most students don't go for the informational interview. Most students follow the traditional, I go to a career fair, I give people my resume, I wait for somebody to call me back. And you want to know what? You are going to be in the funnel with everybody else. But if you're the one that's willing to have an informational interview, to meet with employers, to learn about them as an individual, as a human, not just them as the role that they're providing in the marketplace, you are much more likely to build a stronger bond and get the role itself. I think the statistic was that 70% of all roles go to somebody who knows somebody at that company. So if you can be that person who knows somebody at the company, you're putting yourself in a much greater position to land the role than the student who just submits their resume through the online portal, doesn't talk to a soul, and, fingers crossed I get an interview. Like there's no guarantees with that. And there are no guarantees with the informational interview process either, but you're much more likely to land that. So I think that's great advice and a great story there.
Yeah. And I would even say that even if you can't find somebody that you know in the company, also just following up on your application. And I think this is something that people don't, either they're scared to, or the posting says not to. I, as a recruiter and as someone who's been a hiring manager for a few years, I always appreciated when people reached out and said, very politely, I'm just hoping to follow up on my application. I'm really excited to hear back. Obviously you don't want to follow up every single day. You want to still be polite and professional in that way, but showing that you're eager and that you're excited, and maybe in those follow-up emails, mentioning again why you're so excited. So that will really help you stand out as well.
I love that. I'd love to take a moment to ask the students a question real quick. What are some of your values? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about it. Elsa brought up this idea of what are your values? Is it benefits? Is it the mission of the company? Is it doing something that you love? Is it having work-life balance? Is it being able to grow? Is it making money? It could be making money. I think we have vilified this idea of making money. For some people, that's just what drives them. I just think it's an interesting pendulum swing. I think we talk in social media, it's not all about the money. And for a lot of people, it's not. but for other people it is. And that's okay. You know, it's not necessarily, necessarily my cup of tea, but I think that drives you. And if it does, that's okay. By the way, it's totally cool. Like that's something that's not to be ashamed of. But what drives you? What are your values for your work? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about it. So let's talk about the interview process. We're going through the interview. We're trying to get our foot out there. Resumes and cover letters. What is the purpose of them? Why do they exist?
Yeah, it's funny. And I think being as a, hiring manager the last few years, I really realized how important they are, a new perspective. And while, unfortunately we only have so much time to really look at someone's application and their resume, we know what we're looking for. And unfortunately, with this day and age, it tends to be that hiring managers are hiring for other hiring managers within the organization, right? So they only have so much leeway. And while personality, other things that are not on paper are really, really important, especially when it comes to the interview, getting your foot in the door with the resume and the cover letter is so important because you can't portray that stuff always on the piece of paper. So it's essentially what you use to stand out. It's what you use to, show your qualifications and show why they should follow through and give you that call and learn more about the other attributes that you do offer for them.
And you are also in the recruitment space as well. So you are probably very intimately aware of like all the key things that a hiring manager is seeking when it comes to finding that right candidate. What were some of the things that you were looking for in somebody's resume that made them really stand out? Or maybe sometimes it didn't make them stand out. Maybe it just like they met the minimum requirements and you're like, okay, cool. Like they can move on to the next kind of funnel of resumes. What was that for you?
Yeah, I think it's hard because I did recruit for and hire for a variety of positions. So there were entry level, and I guess for entry level, it was more about maybe education or what do they bring to the table that helps them align with the potential role. And, also, not every position that we really focus too much on education and things like that, but that does help you. So if you don't have much experience, you need to offer other things. So extracurriculars, or that you were on, a varsity team for 4 years, just showing those committal resources as well could help. Again, trying to think about what we look for entry level. Also, having positions that you kept, longevity for. So tenure is really key. Employers are looking for individuals and employees that want to stay there for a long time. So if you were working as a barista for 7 years, that's going to look great for a potential, entry level position, for instance.
Ooh, let's talk about that. I think that's, I don't know if I agree with that. I think, well, I'd love to learn your thoughts. I think there's this interesting shift. I think the historical like corporate mentality was like, hey, like we want people to stay here for a while. But it seems like there's almost this shift going on right now where companies are like, hey, we kind of don't expect you to be here for forever. I mean, don't get me wrong, turnover is not great, but we're not blind or ignorant to believe that, okay, you're going to be here for the rest of your life. Like, what are your thoughts on this changing mentality about the future of work and how long people stay within their roles?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that it probably depends on the company, and some organizations are a little bit more traditional than others. And I think that there's always the goal that you want individuals to stay for long term, want to be invested, but you also want them to come with experience and have had other roles. So I've ran into it a few times, in my experience, where I was trying to represent an individual, for instance, who had 20 years at one company, and it turned out to be a negative. And that kind of broke my heart, because while I understand that their concerns, and some of the concerns would be that, maybe they're not as adaptable, maybe they're not as flexible, maybe they kind of got in a rut and then they got, they weren't motivated to really push themselves. And so those types of concerns comes up. So I do think there's a sweet spot, depending on where you are in your career, depending on the position you're applying for, all those things. But it's hard. I think every hiring manager is different and every company is different. And Yeah, I think that having 20 years of experience, same company could be an excellent thing and also could hurt you. So
That's so.
but I also don't think people should hop around too much too. That also could really hurt you.
That I think makes sense too. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, if I'm hearing you right, if you don't switch jobs enough, you could potentially be perceived as complacent and or lacking drive. But if you switch jobs too many times, you are perceived as impatient and not potentially not easy to work with.
Although I have been in situations where maybe the companies that I was with weren't a right fit. And, if you're ever unhappy in an organization, it's never, ever worth your time to stay there. You're going to hurt your mental health and probably other aspects of your life. And, we already only have one life. So I think that it's okay to make those decisions. I wouldn't stress, I just got this job. I have to stay here for at least a year before I move. No, if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. And the next employer will understand. You may have a little bit a more challenge. And I think that prefacing in a positive way, kind of why you made the change might help get your resume along, or calling to explain that. But just making sure that the way you communicate your reasoning is a positive way, I think that you're going to be in okay shoes.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's cool. I think that makes sense. I think that's good guidance in terms of how to just kind of handle where you're at, what you're doing, and how to make sure that you're making the most of it. Because you're right, you don't want to be in a position where you're in a bad spot or in a role that's negatively impacting your mental health. Because you're right, you do only live once, and work should not be the thing that consumes you. It should be the thing that fuels you to do the other things in your life. It's a part of life. So I think that's cool. I think that's good advice. I'd love to ask the question about, now that we're in the interview, let's say I'm a student, I've got the interview and I'm about to enter into this interview process. If I'm interviewing virtually, what are some things that I can do to help myself stand apart?
Yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit, but coming prepared. So knowing exactly why you're there. They want to hear. So I guess I should back up. My mom always used to say, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And, she also taught me that people love to talk about themselves, right? So if you leave an interview and you were the one speaking most of the time, that's fine. But I think that you want to have the goal of making the other person speak more, because if they walk away and they're like, wow, I talk so much about myself and I really like Elsa, they're genuinely going to have a really positive feeling about you. I think it's science. I don't know. But I think asking them a lot of questions and being prepared and being interested and excited again, and being able to point out things that really, stuck out to you, what's admirable, what's inspiring about their company, what's inspiring about that person, and asking that person, how did you get here? And what makes you so excited to be here every day? And, where do you see the company going? And asking those types of questions throughout the interview, I think is really going to make you stand out from the rest.
Your mom is a very wise person. Yeah, I think it was a tip from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. But people love to talk about themselves. So if you can, spend the time talking about them. Like, at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, they're there to interview you, but they don't care about you. They care about them. You care about yourself. And if somebody's taking the time to ask you questions and essentially care about what your responses are, that says a whole lot about your character than any possible response you could give about your own accolades. Like, at the end of the day, people love to talk about themselves. And if you show that you are a great question asker, it's communicating that you are a great listener and you're a great communicator. People want to hire great listeners and great communicators, regardless of whether or not you're actually a good listener or communicator. But if you're willing to ask the questions and take that back seat, you are much more likely to convey a positive feeling in the eyes of the interviewer.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really good tip. So now let's talk a little bit about the post interview. Let's say we've done an interview, we did great, we get an offer. But we're waiting on a couple other companies. Maybe we interviewed at a couple places and we haven't come up with our priority list of what's number one. We haven't gotten the full offer yet from the other two companies. Like, maybe we're waiting to see how the financials shake out. how do you handle the scenario where you get an offer and they say, hey, we need to know, we get an offer, they give you no deadline for when to follow up or respond or accept, and you're waiting for others. How do you handle that? What is the proper etiquette for a scenario like that?
Yeah, so communication is key. And I would say that, employers aren't idiots, right? They know that you're probably looking around. This isn't the only company you've ever applied for in your whole life. So they won't be surprised or shocked that you've had other opportunities that you're waiting on. So I think just communicating about those processes, and again, stressing that you're really excited about this opportunity. Thanks again so much for providing this offer. I am waiting on another one. And I would love to weigh all my options before I give my final thoughts and decisions, and asking for a timeline, or even not being afraid to ask for an extension if needed from the employer that gave you that offer. It's better to communicate more than to, kind of hide in a corner and hope that by the time you respond to them, that the offer will still be there. You want to give them that attention. So, and then also not being afraid to ask the other company that you're waiting on an offer for a timeline and an update politely too.
Yeah, I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. One thing I think I would add into that is just maybe before asking that company when they would like to just have an idea, just maybe you can clarify from their perspective when they would like to know back. A piece of advice that I heard from an HR executive about a year ago, which it wasn't even a piece of advice, it was just a story that she shared that she thought was like so impactful that a student did, that I'd love to share because I think it makes a lot of sense. She essentially had made an offer to a student, and this student had received 2 other offers. And as opposed to going to her and just telling her flat out no, he took the offers to her and said, hey, I was wondering if you could help me through this decision-making process. Could you kind of help walk me through this? Because, I'd love to share with you the offers that I've received and kind of learn what you would do if you were in a scenario like of my shoes, and almost going to them, the HR manager, as a consultant, because she could then see how her offer stacked up to the other offers that this student received. And her offer was like, for maybe 2/3 of the actual offer, the one of the offers that this student had received. And he was like, this is the scenario we're at. And she was like, well, I don't have the budget to get up to where this other offer is. However, like the fact that you walked me through this decision-making process and let me know about where we stood in all this scenario, like that made a big impact on her. And lo and behold, 2 years later, when they had a new role at a higher level open up, he was the first person she reached out to. She said, hey, we've got a role where we can compensate you at a level where we know it's commensurate with your value to the company. Is this something you'd be open to? And he accepted. And so the point is that even if you get an offer, it doesn't actually mean that you have to burn that bridge if you can communicate and incorporate them in the decision-making process. Because like this HR executive, she wasn't offended that he didn't take her offer from the initial one. She's like, yeah, you're getting paid 20 grand more to work at this other company. Like I can't get the budget to get there for you. So she wasn't offended. She didn't feel like she was left hanging on the table. She understood why you made the decision. And the fact that she had the opportunity to rebut or potentially come with a counter offer made her feel incorporated and included in the decision-making process. And I thought that was a really cool example of just how a student really, I think, made the most out of the interview process, and just not even the interview process, the post-interview process.
Mm-hmm. Also, I would say definitely sending follow-up emails and following up, even if you can, physical mailers really are quite impactful. I know I personally sent out a few in my day, and funny enough, I would learn that they still have that thank you note, because it was just so thoughtful to them and really stood out. And no one really gets regular mail as much besides, spam or bills. And so that can really help set the stage. And whether it's not that the job that you just interviewed for, again, it could set you up for the future, and you never really know what opportunities could come about depending on how you played your cards initially.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I love that. And it's just about the reputation is everything thing. If you are able to maintain that reputation, you're much more likely to have a positive bond moving forward. Shoot. one of one of our guest speakers that I interviewed yesterday was mentioning how she had applied for a role, didn't get the role, ran into the interviewer at the mall, like at a dress store, while in line to pay for a dress, and they reconnected, and the interviewer said, "Hey, have you landed on your feet yet?" And she's like, "No, not yet. You know, I'm still looking." She said, "Well, have you applied for these roles? We just opened them up." And she ended up landing the next role that they opened up, when in reality, in her mind, she was thinking, "Oh, this person's a total jerk. Like, she doesn't like me or whatever." And in reality, she was just creating a narrative in her mind about that, but instead decided to chat with her anyways, and it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's cool. I mean, those types of things happen. So Elsa, I'd love to learn, are there any just kind of interview etiquette or tips that you feel like students should really make sure that they hit on? I mean, I know you mentioned just be prepared for everything and anything. I guess maybe, do you mind elaborating on what some of that preparation looks like for you?
Yeah, I think I touched a little bit on kind of having those questions prepared and researching the company, what stands out. But I also think that practicing questions for yourself and knowing, you can just do a quick Google search on what are the typical questions that someone might ask in an interview, and like, why should we hire you? And, what makes you an amazing fit for this role? And taking a friend or a colleague and taking the time to practice those a little bit, I think is really great. Obviously, they're may not answer any or ask you any of those questions, but I think having that practice is only going to make you feel more confident going in. And then also, I like to say, showing up on time is really important. So I always try to show up 20 minutes before I'm supposed to be there, but I don't walk in until exactly 10 minutes prior. And you'd be surprised how many people that I've met and interviewed have been, late, and it's sort of, it just doesn't set you up well. So being, 10 minutes early where, it's not too early, but not too, but it's still right around that time frame where you're able to prepare and kind of get yourself comfortable. And then also attire really matters a lot. And so funny enough, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Rogue Brewing, but I went and interviewed with them once, and it's Portland, and they're very casual, and I'm used to the corporate world, and I showed up very overdressed. And I think people and employers want to have a good culture fit too. So it's always good to dress one notch above, the standard of what folks dress like at the company. Because again, it'll help you match with the company or the culture, and make them feel like, they're comfortable in interviewing you as well. So you can kind of find that out. You usually can ask the person that's scheduling your interview kind of how people usually dress at the company. Some of those tips.
Well, that's an interesting, I don't know, because I feel like if you ask that question, it could be interestingly perceived. Like, if you're talking about Road Brewing, you might, I don't know, you might be expected to kind of do your own reconnaissance of like what the culture is like. If you can chat and do informational interviews with other people who work at the company to kind of get an idea of where the culture is at, just to get a vibe of like what the dress code is. Because yeah, I think if you ask the question to the interviewer, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. Like if you ask the question and they like, it's a very professional environment. I don't know. What do you think they're thinking about you by just asking the question?
Well, I would assume that they're thinking you're trying to be prepared and you want to put your best foot forward. But I mean, it's true. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, I mean, I think everything can be perceived the wrong way, right, in this day and age. So you want to be more cautious. Most companies are on social media platforms, so Facebook and LinkedIn. And a lot of times they're posting photos of their team members. So you can do a little bit of research there. That usually helps you give a good idea, and also just understanding the industry. So, if it's construction, you kind of have it's a different vibe compared to maybe finance and accounting, right? So kind of just taking educated guesses as well.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think speaking of the topic of doing your background research on just like social media or that sort of thing, like that can even lead into the questions that you ask during the interview. Like if you were to say, "Oh, I noticed that this press release came out 2 days ago about the company and XYZ thing is going on. How has that affected your role?" Like even if the interviewer has no idea how this affects their role, or even if the interview has never even heard that this news has come out, they might be like, whoa, this person's done their research. It's like, it doesn't make you look bad that you asked the question. If they don't know what's going on, it makes them look bad. But if you do ask the question, it shows that you've done your research. So there are ways to kind of casually drop nuggets that you've done your research without actually being a brown noser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
That's cool. So are there any other tips or any other suggestions that you have for students as they go through the interview process and just try to put themselves in the best position to set themselves apart?
Yeah, I mean, I set themselves apart. I'm trying to think here. Stuff I maybe haven't mentioned. I mean, the tools that are out there and the resources that are out there, LinkedIn is an incredible tool, and you can do LinkedIn Premium for free usually for the month. And from there, you can set filters and find team members that you went to school with and things like that. So I really think that you tool to your advantage is amazing, and not being scared to send direct emails to hiring managers, HR directors, talent acquisition managers, recruiters, and just having a great kind of elevator pitch, I think is really key to help, again, get your foot in the door. Talking to past employees that work there and saying, like, who should I contact if I'm interested? And, they might be able to help you. And you'd be surprised by how many professionals want to help other professionals. Everyone has been in their shoes. Everyone has been looking for a job at least once in their lives. If not, they're a very lucky person, but everyone has looked for a job. So everyone, especially on that platform there, it's a networking platform for a purpose, and people are there to network. So not being afraid to really put yourself out there and reach out. And worst case, they don't respond, but you never know what the reasoning could be. Maybe they just don't get on anymore. So don't taking that stuff too personally, and just keeping your head up and knowing that rejection is part of it, and just, kind of keep going. So.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's really cool. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's really well delivered guidance. Yeah, I think we've covered some really key things here as it pertains to just making the most out of that interview and really setting ourselves apart for success. I'd love to take a moment to ask students a couple more questions. One is, what is something that you would like to apply and start doing now to start getting yourself out there, to meeting the right people, to connecting with the right people? Post in the comment section. What are new things that you're willing to try? Whether that means reaching out to people, having informational interviews, asking questions and communicating. And then the other question that I would love to know is more of a situational question, but if you were in a scenario where you have multiple offers, how would you handle that situation? Post in the comment section. So those are the two questions. One is, what is something that you're willing to do now that's different and unique than what you're accustomed to doing in terms of putting yourself out there and reaching out to people? Post in the comment section. The other is, if you are encountered with a scenario where you've got multiple offers, how will you handle that situation? Post in the comment section. You may not be in a scenario where you've got multiple offers, but I just want you to go through the mental exercise of, like, what would you do if you were in that scenario? I just post in the comment section. I'd love to learn your thoughts. So Elsa, this has been great. This has been a really awesome workshop. I feel like you've given some really great guidance and insight to the students just around how they can prepare for the interview. The final question I have for you is, how can our students learn more about you and your work? I know a lot of our students are on LinkedIn. Are you okay with them connecting with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, of course. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to chat about the many careers that I've had and positions I've had, and maybe the people that I might know in other industries. Like I mentioned, I'm one of 5. So some of my siblings live in New York City, Maryland. I have some family in California. So I'm pretty spread out and moved across the country. Would be open to talking to anyone about that, helping them kind of navigate those types of decisions. I can be a resource in any way, and would love to connect with everybody.
Cool. That's awesome. Elsa, thank you for being here. This has been great. Students, thank you all for being here. I look forward to seeing you in our next workshop. Have a good rest of your night. See you, everybody.